Welcome to the next question. I'm Chi-Chi.
I'm Austin.
And I'm Jenny. So who do we have with us today?
Today we have the great Rachel Cargle of Instagram fame, and also she's got a lot of followers, but really she's been doing some really amazing things. I would consider her to be kind of an entrepreneur activist, if that's a thing. But she has a really popular lecture, or she just finished it, called Unpacking White Feminism. She started a therapy fund for Black women, which I think is amazing, and just, that's transformative. She's also a writer and has done some really thought-provoking work, especially about nudity, which we really get into, which I love that part of our conversation.
Totally.
And we'll save that. But it was really challenging for me to talk about, but it was great. I felt like it really kind of pushed a lot of, how we show up in the world as Black women and what we feel like we have permission to do and not to do.
Yeah. It makes me really uncomfortable when people belittle activism on social media.
Yeah.
And I feel like Rachel is one of the people that I am constantly lifting up. Like, do you see this level of creativity?
Yeah.
Do you see the amount of money she's raising on behalf of Black women?
Yep.
Do you see how many people she's teaching? Yes, I am just eternally impressed with what she has been able to do with technology connected to racial justice and equity.
Totally. I love that she's going where people are. And I love her. There's so many aha moments that I have when I'm reading her work of just there's fresh insight, or even learning through her learnings. I love that she is learning in front of us.
Yes.
And that just feels really important to model, that this is not I'm the expert, so just sit and listen to me. It's really important to say, I might have knowledge, but I'm never at my cap of what I could know. And so I love that she just feels like a student of the world and inviting other people into that as well. And I think she's doing things in really smart ways.
I agree. She's so disruptive, and I love it.
Yeah. So I loved our conversation. I loved how much we laughed. I loved the places that we went to that I just didn't expect. It was just fun. It was fun, and it felt like an important work that she's doing. So it's exciting to be able to support her in a little way.
Mm-hmm. Should we get started?
Let's do it. It's time for the next question. Who are some of the people that you're learning from? Who are some of your mentors? Because I feel like you do such a great job of kind of learning in public and taking people along on that journey. But I'm just curious, who's mentoring you? And who are the people that just, in general, just are holding you down?
I think a lot of the Black women in this space of doing anti-racism work, I think we always are very there for each other, whether it's online, whenever we're in each other's cities, we always try to see each other. So those are just small reminders of saying I see you, I hear you. And that just knowing that you have people who regard you in that way can be a sense of comfort. But also just my really close girlfriends. I really value now people who knew me before anyone knew my name. And I'm sure you know how it is you just value people who understand who you are at the most basic level, as opposed to being able to walk up to you and tell you the last thing that you wrote or something like that. Who don't, so I value a lot of people who have known me my whole life from high school and things like that. But I've been asked that question, and I realized that a lot of my mentors are people who I read their work who might have passed away before. So looking at Maya, looking at Lorraine, looking at a lot of Black women who have done this work over time, who have been in the public light in one way or another, seeing Toni Morrison's documentary that just came out.
Gosh, I cannot wait to see it.
It was like a moment of recognition to see, when she won the Nobel Prize, it was everything changed for her. And even though I haven't won a Nobel Prize, seeing those transitions, studying people in their transitions, recognizing, I just try to study people in their lives to try to get crumbs of experiences that they've had to try to apply it to me. I've realized some of my greatest friends and mentors are people who aren't necessarily here anymore, but luckily their work was public, so I'm able to study it and learn from it.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Well, I feel like people affirm what a good teacher you are on a regular basis, but I think for us, we've also just really valued how you learn.
Absolutely.
So
What a great
well
student.
publicly.
Totally.
I think sometimes people they'll come online and they're an expert and there's nothing,
Right.
There's it's like, how did you get to that point? And how are you continuing to grow? Because I think sometimes we can just say like, oh, well, I'm here and that's it. And like, I'm not going to show you how this process works. And I think what you do is so valuable.
Yeah, I don't think I would ever come out and say I'm an expert. Well, there's two things. One, especially in anti-racism work, I say Black women are 100% experts regardless, whether they have a degree, whether they come out and say I'm an expert. In a lot of my lectures, I hand the mic, like if any Black woman raises her hand and has something to say, I will hand her the mic and sit back and say, this is your classroom now because you are a teacher with me. Black women are always teachers with me in whatever space. But I also think that part of the joy of learning is teaching. And so whenever I'm always incredibly excited to share with my audience and my readers what I've learned, just because I don't know, it's like this cycle of teaching and learning and teaching and learning. I hope I get to do that forever.
I just think how you just modeled it so beautifully of just like, there was no air of, why would you be defensive about that? Like, I think they brought a really, really great reminder of who are we centering in, in what we're trying to do here, and kind of bringing that perspective into just a different place in the conversation.
And a big part of that, and I'm definitely learning, but also it's becoming clear in how I'm doing my work. I'm not on the ground all the time. So a lot of times I have to hear from the organizers who are in neighborhoods doing things, and they tell me what they need me to say. And I've been putting that into my work, where if I go to a city that I don't know much about who are asking me to speak, one of my requirements is I need 15 minutes with people of color from your community, so then they can tell me what they want me to say that they are rarely heard.
Every time I do a training, I do the exact same thing. I find the Black women in the room and say, what have you been saying that no one has heard? Right.
Yes.
Or what would you get in trouble for saying?
Yes, and I'll say it because I'm leaving here in 15 minutes. Yes.
Listen,
anyways.
I got my check.
Yep, exactly. I do that all the time. So I'm learning that. And I mention it when I lecture as well. I always say, I know you all are here and you're excited to see me, and you wanted your Instagram picture, but how many of you have actually been to a Black Lives Matter meeting? Like you say that you're showing up to have these conversations, but are you only showing up when someone with over 200 followers comes in the city? Like, how are you actually showing up? So these are always opportunities for me to center the people in the area, as opposed to the fact that you have, someone who might give you a little bit of clout because you were in the same space as them.
Yeah, that's so good. You're like a megaphone amplifying. I love that.
Because they know stuff that I don't know that's going on.
Right.
I have the basic things that we're all experiencing, but I'd rather speak to something at that particular space that will actually affect the individual community.
So much of my Twitter feed right now is organizers and academics.
Totally.
Because that's who's teaching me, right?
Yes.
These folks on the ground and these folks who've been studying forever.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually want to hear about your experience in the summer school. I saw that you posted about that, and that just seemed really fascinating. But what did you learn? What did you come away with that you feel like is changing the way you're engaging and looking at the world?
Yeah, I just didn't know much about European history within the diaspora. Like, it's just not something we learn. It's interesting. A lot of countries learn about America, but America learns nothing about other countries. It's wild.
And we barely learn about our own.
So
That history is a little bit
It's so concerning. So I went there, and they brought in professors from all over Europe and the US to teach on various aspects of Black identity within European countries. And so it was both exhilarating to just speak with, beautiful Black women from Switzerland, beautiful Black women from Germany, beautiful Black men from Brooklyn who came in to learn it, like just really getting together with people who look like you and experience things like you, but from very different lenses. So that was exhilarating. But then also it was absolutely heartbreaking to see, like, we're all going through the same things. Like, to see a video of police brutality in the Netherlands is like, what? Like, why is this a conversation everywhere? And so it was very enlightening. I learned a lot of history that I didn't know. I learned a lot of things that will definitely enhance my conversation around race and racism. Because I do have an audience in other spaces besides America. And I feel like I want to serve them with more knowledge. And so this is another opportunity for me to teach as I learn. So I was very adamant in seeking out opportunities like this so that I can be more well-rounded in the conversation I'm having. Because ultimately, it's all connected. There's so many spaces where this intersects, and I was able to see it firsthand from the incredible academics who were in that space. And I happened to be in Amsterdam it's called Ketikoti, and it's basically the Juneteenth of the Netherlands. And so, I mean, I don't think anything compares to being in the Netherlands at a huge festival of thousands of Black people that you don't even consider what that could look or feel like. And so, yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible.
Because it's like, I think of the Netherlands, and I'm sad that's not the first thing I think about. When I think about, wow, that's a really like amazing experience, and I wish that we had. I feel like we need more of those.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I feel like just knowing that they exist
expands
my mind, right? Like just hearing you say that is like,
it is. And it's really critical for us to recognize that there are people going through the same thing in other spaces, both for a sense of comfort, knowing we're not alone, but also for a sense of urgency to know that there's so much happening in so many spaces. And a lot of the people that I learned from, they said, okay, we were watching the Black Lives Matter movement and we applied some stuff to here. So in the ways that America is advanced, we need to recognize how we can use these tools to support the rest of the world, the rest of the diaspora, and what they're experiencing.
Were there things that, like, I'm assuming it goes both ways, right? So what are they doing for their movement, like, that we should be learning from?
I think that there is a lot. It goes back to the academics and organizers. The way that they're connecting their academics and organizers, we need to do a better job of ensuring that the knowledge that's collected in the ivory tower is being dispersed to the people who actually need to know it. So making sure that we're having those connections. And like I said, they're just way more knowledgeable about us than we are about them. And so we need to learn from them, really understanding the whole scope of what being Black means and how our experiences apply to and affect each other. That's one thing. They were way more knowledgeable about us than we are about them, and that was uncomfortable for me.
Wow. I mean, I'm trying to even think about like college courses and certainly high school courses. We had European history as an option, right? And every course around Black folks is American history,
South,
right? Like
American
that's
South,
it. And that's it. I've never
not
heard
even
of
about
a
Africa.
course.
Not even about Africa. Like, let alone Switzerland and Germany. And so so recognizing that there's so much we don't know, and we need to tap into that and support each other and learn about each other, because the diaspora is so rich and I'm sure this is part of the plan, we're missing out on the connections with each other because we don't even know about the way people are experiencing. And they're on the ground, like people are on the ground doing anti-racism work, going against getting arrested. And we need to just study more, do our research, do the work to really understand what's going on.
I have so many questions, but let's just talk about the therapy fund. I think that is such a powerful tool in so many ways. And I love your model around that, how you're not like, here's a form and all these things you gotta
apply.
Like, we'll decide.
Show me your stars.
We'll decide whether or not you're worthy. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like it's just like, if you're a Black woman, I think Black women specifically. If you're a Black woman, you get this. I mean, I think that is like.
I was so surprised when I started looking through the sign-up form. There were therapists applying for therapy. It was like therapists, lawyers, doctors, these careers where you think that they have the income to be able to afford it, and they didn't. And there's no programs that say, we know you make a ton of money, but also you can also get this, because there's all these stipulations around who deserves something, who gets to have something. And as an anthropologist, as someone who studies anthropology, really looking at all of the numbers and the ages and the professions of people, and it was so frustrating because the form was 5 questions. What's your name? What's your therapist's name? What's your email? What's your therapist's email? How can we contact you?
Right.
Wow.
Then people sent me emails saying, Rachel, this is why I want the therapy. I made it this this way on purpose.
I don't want to
But we're so conditioned to think that we have to prove ourselves and why we deserve something. And so through those stories that people ended up writing me, I realized people were saying, you know, I'm a therapist, but I can't even afford to get therapy myself. This is going to change the way that I'm able to exist in the world. And, you know, there's just this intersection, not only the intersection of like race and womanhood, but also this intersection of race, womanhood, and socioeconomic status that can marginalize us in so many ways. This therapy fund really shocked me in the ways that people were showing up, and I'm just so proud of everyone who was able to sign up and say, this is what I need, and for me and my team to be able to do the work to support them in that.
It just makes me it makes me angry when I hear the term social media activist, like when people say that with so much condescension in their voice, right? I feel like this happens, truth be told, it happened a lot on the BET Music Awards this last round. There were at least 3 people who...
Really? I didn't watch.
We can talk about it later.
Okay.
So anyway, but that even like our own people are being fed this lie that what you do on Twitter or what you do on Instagram doesn't really matter, right? And I feel like you are such a clear example of that being false. Like you have mobilized an entire community to give something particular to Black women that we have been needing for decades, for generations.
Ages,
right? All because of this thing called Instagram.
Right.
I mean, it's a tool. It just like anything else, just like writing a book is a tool, just like being on TV is a tool. It's an opportunity for you to use what you're given in order to influence, in order to start conversations, in order to bring people together, in order to have a conversation. And so while social media is both the worst thing ever, it also is the best thing ever. I mean, I can't imagine life without it because it gave me a lot of my career in being able to be heard and seen. Being able to be heard and seen, but also it has created communities. I can hashtag who has a pimple on their left calf and I will find a community. Like there are a million ways to find community on social media that you would never find in any other way. And so I think that those of us who are out here being strategic and saying, okay, this is what I know can happen in this space. I'm a very strategic woman. There's not much I do that is just off the cuff just because I feel like doing it. I know my audience, I know who I'm serving, and I know how to ensure that we're all working in the most efficient way to serve each other. And so I've taken that to heart. I take it very seriously. I take social media very seriously.
Right, as you should. I mean, to think about the level of mobilization, the amount of money that you have raised. I mean, that is work you should be proud of.
And it absolutely is. And it's also, and I can't say this enough, it's also affirmation for everyone. Affirmation to say, I'm not alone doing this work. I can join people in arms. I mean, and also I get a lot of conversation from people who have disabilities who can't get out of the house to march. I get from people who are new mothers and say, I wish I could have made it to your lecture, but I still want to learn and I still want to change and grow. So I'm like, great, you can watch it online. People who are able to, this is giving access to people that didn't always have access. So we have to consider, what it is actually doing and how we can use it to the best of it. We have to think critically about how we want to use our social media to be intentional and efficient in the work that we're trying to do.
That's good.
How do you do like self-care for yourself as you're engaging with people on social media? Because I feel like there is a ferocity and like fearlessness in people. Like there is a brazenness of people in comment section, in your DM. Like how do you, I don't want to be like, do you have rules for yourself? But like, what do you do so that you can stay in this a long time and not get burnt out? And how do the rest of us engage? Like, I would so much rather have a conversation about like anti-racism with someone versus like commenting on some random section feed of, some like racist buffoon. So I'm just really curious, like, what are the ways that we engage, and how do you know when it's like there's no hope here. I'm just gonna move on with my day.
Yeah, there's two things I use because it's really wild that I get asked what my self-care is, probably more than I get actual race-based questions. Like people, anytime I have a Q&A, it's like, how do you, like people are way more interested in my self-care than like being in conversation with the actual topic at hand. So that's the thing that I'll have to do some research into and figure out what that is. Do you get that also? Do you get that a lot?
No.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh.
People do not care about my self-care.
She's fine. That is so funny. Well, it probably looks like you're taking care of yourself better than I'm probably like frantically typing. And everyone's like, is she okay? They're probably not asking me what my self-care is. They're probably like, are you caring for yourself?
This is an intervention.
Yeah, this is actually an intervention.
This is not an intervention. Just so you know, we're kids.
No,
Yeah.
I actually think you do. I think you,
Yeah.
at least from what I've seen, I know you had like a checklist for your summer and like, and I mean, I took a picture of that. I was like, yeah, I'm going to need to like do all that. She wrote what? Okay, great.
I think that's what it is. I think it's
yeah.
because you're so vocal.
Yeah.
I don't talk about my personal life at all online.
Right,
And so I
yeah.
think it's because we see you as a person. I'm not
Yeah.
sure that people
Yeah.
realize I'm a person when I show up.
I hear you.
I think
hear
people
you.
see you as a person.
And
I
you're
hear
doing
you.
all this work. So I think, and you keep going. So obviously something is.
Sustaining.
Right. Yeah, there's something keeping you afloat.
That's so funny. Well, there's two ways that I answer it. The first is that I often say, if I was to have an in-depth conversation with a kindergarten teacher, I would say, how in the world are you in a room with a classroom of 4-year-olds all day? Like that would it blows my mind to think that someone would voluntarily do that. And I'm assuming that that's how people feel about me. Like, why in the world are you volunteering to do this type of work? And so I think that this is just any kindergarten teacher would be like, oh, I love it. It's my work. This is what I was born to do. Like they would say it with just the ease that we could never fathom. And so I think this is my work. This is what I was meant to do. I have a space where writing is easeful for me because this is just the work that I do. And so while a lot of people come to me and say, I get questions saying, Rachel, this is what someone said to me. How, I started crying before I could even answer because I was so overwhelmed. It's fairly easeful for me to say, oh, this might be a good response and this is the most succinct way that you might be able to say it. And I don't know why I'm like that. I didn't choose, I didn't choose this gift, but it just is what it is. And so I'm using it the way that I can use it. So that's the first answer. It's probably not as heavy to me as it looks to other people, because in the same way, I would absolutely die being in a classroom with 4-year-olds all day. Like it would never, ever, ever happen. That's I'm assuming that's the same way people feel about me and my work. So it's not as much as a burden on me as it would be on other people.
Multiple times I've heard you say this, that you're an entrepreneur at heart. Like that is how you engage in the world. And I think what I think is so unique about you is that sometimes we put, activists like in a box and we're like, okay, this is what you look like, this is how you do things. And I feel like you've at least been really vocal about how you are engaging this and the way that you think through that. And you talk about money, which I think is like huge. Like, I mean, well, as an activist and as a woman of color, like I think that's something we just don't do a great job at that. But I'm interested in how you start, because you've always been an entrepreneur, but then you made this jump into activism. What was that thought process like? What did that look like, that jump from this is who I am, but I'm engaging using the tools that I already have?
Yeah, this work of being a activist was not, I didn't wake up like, I'm going to start talking about race to white women today. Like it was not on the agenda.
Life plan.
It was not on the to-do list. But after my photo from the Women's March went viral, all of a sudden my face and my feminism was like on the front lines. And I was recognizing that a lot of the tools that I was using in my work as an entrepreneur, or just that I've always been a good writer. I've always gotten great feedback from teachers and my parents. And so writing was always easeful to me. And so being able to use it in a wildly meaningful way is incredibly fulfilling to know that it's so funny. And I'm sure you all have situations where something that's so easeful to you, someone else will be like, this was so stressful. And you're like, was it? And so we all have these gifts that we're able to use in different ways. And this just happens to be, writing is nothing for me. Speaking in front of crowds, nothing for me. Like I could do that all day, every day, and it wouldn't really put too much of a burden on me. And so this was, it's such a it's such a gift to be able to do something so meaningful with such ease. Like, I'm so grateful that I have this path where I'm able to do meaningful work. But my life as an entrepreneur, where I was building businesses and I was being strategic and I was, convincing people of things, of why my business matters and things like that, to be able to take those skills and use them in a much more meaningful way was also fulfilling, because I love building things. I love building companies. I love building systems. I remember the first time I was able to pay my pay women. It was like, what? Like, I can pay people? Like, it was just the best feeling ever. And so being able to do that in a space where it's directly impacting my community is like a dream come true, to be able to use the skills that I have. So I think that my entrepreneurship shows in the way that I do my work. I think that I'm very... I like build a business plan for how I'm going to do things a little bit. And by business plan, I mean I make sure that all of my boxes are checked and we can be as efficient as possible. And also that's where I learned my value. I learned to ask for money. I learned to ensure that I would be able to pay and take care of myself while doing the work that I do. So I think that I am a little more comfortable with conversations of money because of that. But I also recognize how radical it is, particularly in this space. I always say, if we had Patreon when Martin Luther King was fighting, he deserved every penny that we would have put in. He would have deserved, if he would have made $1 million a month because of his followers, he deserved it. It would have been okay, and he deserved it. And I think, like we said earlier, a big part of me, and this is such like a first world problem, but a big part of me dealing with existing in this space in the way that I am in a very vulnerable way is me giving myself permission to have nice things while doing this work. And I had a follower who made this long ass, am I allowed to cuss? Sorry.
Yes, please do. We encourage it.
This long ass comment on my talking about like, oh, I saw you were lecturing at corporate spaces and you have a membership at the Wing, and I'm like, so you want me to not get paid by bigger companies to do this work in spaces where they probably need it more than anywhere else. And it's like it's really, really hard for people to say. I always say activism is not synonymous with like low pay.
Hello.
Right. It's not. There's no, it's not synonymous. And so I'm committed to living that out. And I mean, and I think a lot of it goes with imposter syndrome. We think a lot like, I don't deserve this for whatever reason. And I think activists can feel that in a big way, because the history of activism is activists being low in the ring of being paid for the work that they're doing. And they're expected to do it for free. They're expected to do it happily without getting paid or things like that. And so I think that I am happy to be the one leading and breaking that mold, because in the end, the more resources I have, the more I can serve other people. Whether that means, I remember I took a trip to Jamaica earlier this year, and I went back and forth 8 million times about whether I would share it. Like, am I allowed to be in Jamaica? Like, am I allowed to be on vacation? Am I allowed? And that's part of me sharing what we said earlier, me sharing how vulnerable I am. But I recognize that there's such a lesson in so much. And the more that I share, the more we learn and the more conversation we have. And so money is definitely a very radical, very like out of the box conversation for women, for Black women, for activists. And so I think I'm happy to pour my fearlessness into this area as well, because I wish so much that so many activists from the past could have had the opportunity to have the type of financial resources that we now have with each other, to be able to just, I wish so bad I could cash out Lorraine Hansberry money right now.
I was thinking Fannie Lou Hamer.
So bad.
Oh
like there's so many people that I wish we could have supported. James Baldwin deserved $1 million a month. He deserved it. And so just because it didn't happen before doesn't mean we can't start this precedence of ensuring that the people who are taking care of so many are taking care of themselves. And so I hope this is something that continues and gets bigger, because we really need to think critically about why it is the way it is anyways.
Right. I agree. And I think that's the power of you talking about it and sharing those trips and sharing the pictures, is because not only are you worth it, right? End of conversation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But other Black women need to know that they're worth it too,
Yeah.
right? And other white folks need to know that you need to pay
Yes, for
these
this
Black
work.
women doing
Yeah,
this work,
totally.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's changing the standard.
I hope so.
And even if like you talked so much about loving it, like that's so, I mean, I love that you love your work, but it's still work.
Yeah, it's
And
still work.
It's still
Yeah.
like time, and it's time spent away from other endeavors that you could be
Yeah.
doing. And I just think to recognize that, I think there's this like weird like misconception that like if you love doing something, you should be able to give it away. And it's like, no, if I'm not suffering, like this isn't either or. It could be a both thing. And it's sad for other people that they don't have that.
It is.
So.
Well,
It
we
is.
don't have that with men, right? Like, okay, so you like creating the iPad? Can
Yeah.
I get one for free?
Yeah.
Like, what in the world?
Yeah.
Like, no one would do
Yeah.
that.
I want us to
Yeah, you love
sit at
having
Apple and
for sure.
be like,
I agree.
oh, this was a fun project
Yeah.
for you to work on, wasn't it?
Right?
And let me tell you, they
this?
have a blast.
Right?
They have
Yeah.
a fucking
Right.
blast.
They're like playing pinball
Yes,
or
they're playing
whatever.
ping pong in the
Yeah.
office. Yeah, like their corporate room is a ping
Right.
pong table.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that it's also important, especially in this work, to be paid, because if you pay for what you value, you know? And so I think so many times people are giving this away. Like, I'm just going to come talk to your company. I'll come talk to your group, you know, because I really believe in this work. And and if they don't pay, and if it's not at a standard, that means they don't care either. That's my, like, especially people with the resources to do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
With
Oh,
the
If
budget.
you're walking into a
Right.
company, like,
For sure.
no, you're going to pay
For
me
sure.
because you would have paid Joe Blow to come in and talk
about leadership.
I love
Exactly,
Joe Blow.
exactly.
Or race.
Right, or race.
Right.
Because they could do that too.
Yeah, they would. They would.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things is, and I often say, a lot of times companies will be like, oh, we'll just have our Black employee, let's say at elementary school, we'll just have our Black school teacher talk about race. That's not their job to do, but there are people like us who it is, like, we're literally making our living doing this work. Pay us for it. We are here to take the load off of the people of color in your space. So no, the Black teacher in your school should not be doing the diversity training. The Black teacher, you know, the Black coworker should not be the one you go to talk about race. There are people who you can pay to, and I'm one of them. So ensure that you're doing, and one of my favorite experiences that I had, because a lot of white people, they act like it's rocket science to find a race professional a race professional, that was weird, a person who does anti-racism work professionally. And I was at a university, and there was a white girl who stood up, and she was so proud of herself. She was she was studying to be a librarian. And so she stood up and she goes, oh, we're really looking forward to bringing the conversation of race within the world of librarians, but we cannot find a Black librarian to come into, and we were wondering who we could talk to, how we could do this work. Literally, 3 Black women stood up and said, we are in your librarian program.
Wow.
And I'm like,
snap.
so what research were you doing? There's 3 people in this room, who are doing this work, yet you are telling me you can't find anyone. And so it's one of, like, this. And they need, but they also shouldn't have been the people who they were reaching out to. Like, I was being paid to be brought into. And if you don't have the budget, make the budget to fly someone in, put them up in a hotel, pay them for their time. That's what needs to be done. And just like you would do, you wouldn't ask one of your coworkers to come and do a speech on how to fix your computers just because they're like a white male. Like, you wouldn't do that. And so we need to take the same professionalism. It's not professional for you to do it. It literally has to do with professionalism and what you're willing to spend money on.
And the other piece of it is that just hiring the employee ignores the power dynamics that are at play, because that employee can only say so much about the system, the structure. She's putting her job
That's
at
so
risk
true.
by speaking out. Like, it's not fair
No.
for her to be vulnerable in that way without being paid.
That's
Right.
it.
You're
That
not
woman
gonna
is probably
take
already
that hat off.
suffering under the impression, trying to do her job, and now you're telling her, oh, can you come and do on top? Like, okay, at some point, give her a break and let her.
She needs a vacation.
Exactly. That's
what
what
she
you need to
needs.
give her.
Paid
Exactly.
vacation.
Exactly.
Go to Jamaica.
Yes, go to Jamaica. But I think that is I think what you're doing and setting that example is so important. And we just need to keep talking about that, because I think that so many times people think it's just like a passion project that we're doing. And yes, I am passionate about it because I want the future generations to live a life that are thriving. But also this is hard.
I came to the feminist movement like in my 20s, and I think there was a lot that you just kind of swallow. You just are like, this is good. Yeah, like this is good, and to like unlearn some of the narratives and to be like, oh, let's like take a wider snapshot of not just like male-female dynamics, because that was not the only thing at play. That's not the only thing at play, and to relearn how to move forward. For equality for all people.
I think that's part of the draw to my lectures. People crave being in a lecture hall. People crave being in a classroom. And I conduct it that way. I mean, at the start of my lectures, I say, I'm not performing for you. This is an actual lecture. You need to have something out in which you're taking notes. If I was to actually teach on this subject, it would be 5 semesters long. Totally. So, I'm trying to give you starting points for you to continue to do your work. And also, the thing about lecturing in person is that the audience is part of a community. So on Instagram, anyone could be from anywhere, but in person, people have to deal with themselves right there. So they're seeing their kid's teacher in the classroom. They're seeing their pastor come, and they're like, "Wait, so are we doing this now? Like, are we having this conversation now? Yeah, like, is this happening?" And so one of the great things, and that what I love about lecturing and why I will tour lectures forever, is because it puts the conversation in your living room. It makes it not like, oh, there's this girl talking about race in New York City. It's like, no, there's this girl in Oklahoma talking to me and all of the people in my community. And when Rachel leaves and goes back to New York City, we're still going to be looking at each other, knowing that we know what she taught. And so that's one of the big parts of it.
What's your hope for people as they walk out of your lecture? Like if you could say, I would love for this to be like your next step, what is that? What do you hope for people?
I would love for people to immediately text the 5 people in their realm of influence and say, hey, this is what I learned. We have to talk about this. And then I hope those 5 people say, hey, this is what I learned. We have to talk about this. And for there to be a continuous outpour of information and of conversation about what I teach. And I also hope that people take their notes, all of the names, the dates, the instances that they didn't know about before. And I hope they go home and they Google and they're like, Rachel said nothing to us compared to all of this information that we don't know yet.
The start of the learning journey. Yeah. And I think that's so important, is that, understanding where we come from, and like, as we stand in this present moment, we're not just standing, absent of all that, all of that weight is here. And so all of the history around feminism and like, when we talk about white women choosing whiteness over their womanhood, there's like a history of that. That's not happening today, So.
And I it's really important for me that people come from my lectures thinking more critically about the world in general. And I always say, we're talking about the intersection. When you're in my space, we're talking about the intersection of race and womanhood, because I am a Black woman and that's what I'm going to talk about. But I also want you to consider looking at because I'm primarily speaking in the terms of feminism when I'm doing my Unpacking White Feminism lecture. And I say, was your Women's March disability accessible? Like, what other intersections aren't being discussed or considered? So I'm hoping that I push people to question what else they don't know about other intersections of womanhood.
And I think, again, I think Black women model that so well, because we've lived at the intersection for so long. They were always like seeing those like, okay, well,
other angles.
Exactly. Like, who else is missing and why? And what are the systems that are set up in place that keep us from all being there? And that is a view of the world that I think is lacking in so many spaces. And so to call people to that, and I say that a lot because I think, we should listen to Black women all the time. But I think, for Black women, even to recognize that is a power that you have. Like, and even if you're not like reading all the books or whatever, just you existing in the world is that there's so much knowledge to be gained from that. And I think that it's something we should be bringing into every space that we're in, it's that lens that a lot of people just don't can't get. So.
And I think any good teacher teaches their students how to think.
Yes.
So I hope that I hope it's not so much, because we'll forget. Who remembers what we learned in 8th grade history? Like, we're not going to remember the moment that our teacher said any particular fact or date, but we will remember that he, made us more critical, considering how we even got to where we are over the history of the world. And so I hope that not only do my students take the information that I'm giving them, but they put themselves in a much more critical space, because if we had more critical thinkers in the world, we would be in a couple other spaces. So I hope I'm pushing people to think more critically.
I love that.
Even if it has nothing to do with me or nothing to do with race or nothing to do with feminism, if we have more critical thinkers in the world, we could push a lot further.
Because I don't think it'll stay there. Like, it's fluid. So if you're thinking critically about one issue or whatever, it will just spill over, and that muscle will be flexed and more.
I had an English teacher who would start his class at the beginning of every year by saying that it was his goal to give all of us a headache from thinking so hard.
Oh, I love that.
It's like, that was
high
his
school?
goal. High school. Yeah. He's amazing. And he was
love that.
a fantastic teacher.
Yeah, I'm recognizing the older I get, the more, like, I don't want to go back to school, like, to get the education I got. But I need to design my own my own coursework of, like, okay, and I have 2 white boys that I'm raising, and so I'm like, okay, like, how, I'm not expecting that their history class at school is going to be doing the work that it needs to be doing to prepare them to be anti-racist. And so, I'm so excited about, I feel like there is just the access, like you were saying, like, there is just access to, like, to people's stories, to history in a way that that we have social media in part to thank for that.
And I also want to emphasize that any of the women of color in this room, we know what we know from reading stories, from Googling, from looking up information. We didn't live particular things, so we had to find out the information.
Listen.
White people have access to the same information that all of us had access to understand and teach from. So we can't act like it's this hidden gem of information that only Black women can pour out later. Like, we Google too.
It's behind a magical door.
The magic that only Black women's melanin can unlock. Like, it's literally, we are doing the work. We are doing the work, and everyone else can as well. Yeah.
Rachel, can we please talk about nakedness?
Yes.
So the reason I would love to talk about this is, one, because you are unafraid of posting photos of yourself that are nude, but also because I've never been like a really shy woman around like changing clothes in front of other women and things like that.
I can attest to that.
You know what I mean? Like I'm like, whatever. But that is a very different from just hanging out naked, you know what I'm saying? And I have a group of women who we go on a retreat at least once a year, and part of what we do during that retreat is practice nakedness. It's amazing.
I didn't know that.
It's so, oh my gosh.
That's fascinating.
So
and
we've
I'm
gone
really
to-
uncomfortable in this moment. I'm like, oh my God, that's great, but can I do, no, I don't know.
Why are you uncomfortable?
I don't know, like I still, like that's why I love this conversation, because it's still something I'm very, I don't know, I'm just very like, cautious about that. Like it's not something I feel very free about. Yeah. But I love
what's
that.
now going to happen at the sleepover.
I know. Yeah. I'm like, let me check my calendar. No, just kidding. But I like the idea of practicing.
How did that get started?
So our first retreat was in Denver, and they have a bathhouse in Denver, like a spa in Denver, where they alternate like gender days. Yeah. So there are male days and there are female days. And I think they might actually have a everyone day, actually, I think, maybe. But we went on the female day. And so our whole little group of like 9 of us, all went and did the spa, got massages, and hung out in the whirlpool. And then the next year we went to Florida, and so we all went skinny dipping together. So we were just like threw our clothes off on the beach and ran into the water. And after that, we always plan when we're going to be naked together.
I love it. I love that so
Isn't
much.
that amazing?
That's awesome. I know. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yes, it is.
It is. Maybe not for that.
Literally and subject.
Was it scary for you to post to do it, right? To be naked with other people, and then to post a picture?
You know what? Nakedness was never necessarily a fear for me in any form of my body. And it makes me, so I'll go back, way back. When I was little, my mom used to have these days where she would close all the blinds and everyone would just be naked, and we would like clean the house, and we would like, I don't know, it was just something my mom, I'm assuming now that I'm an adult and I think of who my mom was as an adult, it was probably just a day for her to be like, I don't care about anything. Like it was just not something we considered necessarily bad. It definitely, I mean, she still would yell at me if my skirt was too short, but it wasn't like she was like the most body positive person. But the idea of nakedness was always an idea of like self-care for me, I guess, because the way that my mom would do it, like it was just the ultimate relaxation for my mom, it seemed. And so it was never anything wildly taboo to me. And then I went to Japan. I went to some onsens. So it sounds like the spa that you went to. Yeah, the onsens that I went to in Japan, and seeing these women be nude with each other, and they would bring the kids,
so
the babies could come. Like if you had a child under 5, they would always come in. So it would be male and female in the onsen, and like seeing these women who had absolutely not perfect bodies any way whatsoever, just being comfortable. And it had nothing to do with the body. It had to do with the experience of being there at the spa. And like, and onsens in Japan, they call it baths. It's all just cleaning your body. Like there's little individual shower heads that come out and bowls that you can bathe with. And that was one of the most beautiful experiences, seeing like a 3-year-old girl talking to a 90-year-old woman, and no one having clothes on was just like it was a barrier that was broken, but also didn't matter at all. It was both revolutionary and didn't matter at all. It was like this very interesting.
It is unlike
interesting
anything
thing.
I've ever
I highly suggest if you ever go to Japan, go to an onsen and have that experience, just because it was one of the most lovely things that I've ever experienced. But that before I did that photo that I posted, that was a photo that I did with Sarah Baba. I did this thing where I posed nude for an art class. So I was like on a stage and I was posing nude, and people were drawing me, and I had to stay in that position. Like it was like you changed your posture every 20 minutes or something like that. And I don't know. I think that there's just something incredibly empowering about saying you don't care how anyone feels about your body, and not saying that you actually don't care in that moment, because you do care.
Living it out.
Yeah, but like living it out and actually doing it was a huge thing. And I think that how we do little things to make us feel more in control of life, like whether it's doing a deep clean of our house, or like doing our bills really quickly and saying like, I have a hold on things. And even though it doesn't necessarily mean that, it's these things that make us feel that way. I think that those instances were often ways to make me feel like I'm in control of how I'm perceived at any given point in time. So it didn't matter, because if I was comfortable or I was experimental, even if, I shouldn't even say comfortable, because you're not always comfortable. Even if you're not comfortable, you're the one making the decisions. And so that can be really, really empowering. And it's really funny, because at that photo shoot with Sarah, after I took my clothes, because we knew it was going to be a nude shoot. So after I took my clothes off, Vera and Sarah, those were the two people I was with, and they were like, do you mind if I take my clothes off? I was like, so we were literally all naked in the house taking photos with each other. And so I don't know, it's just like a moment to, especially when you're with friends.
That's right.
It's like just a moment to like exist with each other and honor each other.
And it feels like such a celebration of everything. Because it's one thing for me, like, girl, you look so cute today. It's another for somebody to be like, girl, your little booty is so cute. I'm like,
and I think to add to that, it's another thing to be naked and be like, I don't care. Like to be naked and be like, all of the things that you're probably self-conscious about, it genuinely doesn't matter to me. And I think that that's the value in it. It's not the celebration of the nakedness, it's the not caring of the nakedness.
And almost the embracing of of just as it is.
Right.
And when
like,
you, and when you do that with yourself and with each other, you start to do it with people you meet in public, and you start to do it with people on social media, and it just opens your mind to your ability to not just let yourself exist, but let everyone else exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Good.
And also doing the photo, not the photo, but yes, both the photo and the art. To see your body as art is an experience I think everyone should have.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
It's something that I think everyone should have an opportunity to see their body. It's not sexualized, it's not scrutinized, it's just art. And that's an incredible experience. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a really, I mean, I'm like literally like, oh my gosh.
I know, she's like, next topic.
Anyway, let me button up my blazer. It's me and Austin.
But I also think there's value in whatever modesty you feel validates who you are as a person. I think that too. I think that there's great power in saying this is absolutely not something I'm interested in, and I don't want to do it. I think knowing that you're doing exactly what you want to do is where the power lies.
And I think one of my favorite things is still to be wrapped up in a towel after my shower, just sitting on the bed.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean? Like there's a certain amount of freedom in that for me too.
Yeah. But no, I think even listening to you, I think one thing that's really powerful is this. I grew up in a very like white environment, white school, white church, and I don't have the body of a white girl. Like and so like there are all those things that I think I still actually, I know I'm dealing with it. I'm, slowly getting there, but to be able to accept myself, my body for who it is, and not always wanting it to be something different. And I think, and just being completely honest, I'm still at that like, okay, like it's a conscious decision every day to say like, yes, I accept my body the way that it is. I'm not going to be angry. Like you go for a long time. I remember in high school, like I was pretty much like anorexic. Like, I mean, I ate like animal crackers and Diet Coke. That's all I lived on because I wanted to be, I was like, well, I've got to be like that. And so I've lived longer in a space of body, I hate the word hate, but it was kind of like that because it was like, I'm not okay with that. Then I'm getting more into that place of like, okay, yes, I know that I'm beautiful, but that's work to say that.
It's so hard. I think a lot of my work, because it really started, I got divorced and I started when I was younger, and then I started dating a guy, and he basically broke up with me because he said that I was like very smart and very interesting and very creative, but I was fat. Like that was his reason. Like he didn't. The reason why the conversation came up because we went to a amusement park and I realized that he wasn't holding my hand like he usually did. And I asked him, I was like, "Why are you not holding my hand?" And he was like, "It's hard to claim you right now," or something along those lines. And I remember just being like, what does all of this work I put into my intelligence and my creativity, like, does that mean nothing against my body? And it was to the point where I remember going on first dates and like intentionally hugging men to let them touch my body to say, this is your chance to opt out. Like being intentional to say like, I want you to hug me so that you could choose right now whether this is a body you want to see naked eventually, down the line. And so there was a lot of unlearning what I felt was bad and what I felt wasn't acceptable. And I think it also has to do with, we have to question ourselves. Like, if I think that someone wouldn't want to date me because of my belly, would I date someone who has a belly?
Right.
And whether my judgment is really my own shaming and not necessarily how anyone else feels.
Yes, totally.
And so as I dated more and as I accepted my body more, like literally just touching my body, touching my rolls, touching my thighs, and like touching it, like really, like it's not, I'm not telling my body I'm not avoiding you anymore.
Right.
That was like a huge thing, and it gave me permission to let my partners touch me. And one of the biggest things, I talked about this on an interview I did for Salty Magazine. I was dating a girl, and it was my first time really being in an intimate relationship with a woman, and we were the same size. If not, she might have been a little bit bigger than me, but we were the same size. And I remember we were at a bar and she was about to order something, and I touched her back and I felt her rolls. And I remember thinking, she's so lovely. And then I had a moment of like, oh my gosh, is this what people think about me when they touch me? Like, it was mind blowing for me to consider that I could touch someone's body and it feel like mine and me adore it.
Oh, that's
and like for that was the change. It changed. I was like, this must be how people feel. This could be an option for people when they touch me instead of my ideas. That recoiling thinking that. And so that and so that changed the way how I touch myself and how I touch my body and how I decided that like my body isn't something I'm going to avoid, and I recognize that other people aren't necessarily trying to avoid it either.
Right.
So most of my life, I was a size 6, size 8. And my mother used to joke that I was a hanger because she could put anything on me and it would, right? Post baby. And so now I'm learning how to love a new body. And that's partly why nakedness has been so helpful to me in this stage of my life, is because I am walking past a mirror and being surprised because that's not who I've seen for the last 20 something years, you know? And being able to show a new body and have people love it. And have people respond to my little stripes and my, little tiger stripes. And, it's just been really, really special thing to do with other women in particular.
Your whole model of engaging in these conversations is really academic. You have your own kind of academic path. You've talked about, at some point getting your doctorate, but you've had a couple changes happening recently in your where you're studying. So what's that about? What's the future look like when it comes to your education?
Yeah, so I recently announced that I'm leaving Columbia, which was a huge deal because, it's an exciting thing to get into an Ivy League school in America. That's something to take pride in. And so leaving was a really, really hard decision that I had to make after seeing a lot of the racist incidents that were happening on campus, not just at Columbia, but at schools across the country. And I really had to question, what are my goals and what is it that I am looking for in pursuing an education in these spaces? And what are my career goals long term? And so it was just really frustrating to have to go back and forth with myself, deciding, do I want to be here? How do I want to pursue this education? And so ultimately deciding to leave was me looking at what are other ways that I can be intentional in my learning, include my readers, and how can I set a blueprint for what other options we have. It's a privilege to be able to walk away. And so I want to be able to use my platform and my privilege to help the most amount of people for the longest time. And so me leaving Columbia was an opportunity for me to pursue independent study. And I say that very loosely because saying independent study also sounds like there's oh, this is how you study independently. And there really isn't a blueprint. And so it was me kind of deciding what was possible. And I think every big decision I've ever made in my life was me asking myself what's possible. When I moved to New York, when I made the decision to divorce my ex, when I, everything that I've done has been me questioning, okay, what's possible, and me pursuing that. And so this was another instance of that where I've decided that I wanted to study independently, work with individual scholars whose work I respected, find knowledge in other places. So finding it in various institutes and various lectures that aren't necessarily happening in an institution, but it could be happening at the local library. Studying, how do I want to study? How do I know I study best? Who can give me the affirmation that I need in how I'm learning and what I'm learning outside of it determining my worth with a grade, or a GPA and things like that. And also recognizing that I do a lot of work outside of school. And to add the load of an institution that historically wasn't necessarily respectful to people who looked like me, I'm going to be stressed somewhere. Let me choose where I'm going to be stressed. It's not going to be, I'm not going to pay $10,000 a year to be, a course to be stressed. A course to be stressed. And so I had to make a decision on where I was going to put my energy. And I decided that I wanted to do it in a way that wasn't going to weather me, like so many people had shared with me about their experience in the university. So working with scholars, taking classes in different areas, reading up on things that I want to learn for sure, and ultimately be able to teach. And so I'm launching a virtual lecture hall called Loveland Hall, which is really exciting because I just love the environment of my lectures that I've been able to do. And I realized that it also wasn't entirely accessible to people. So people, who had kids and weren't able to come out on a Saturday night to hear me lecture, now they'll be able to be in a space where they can learn in a more long-term way. So it's like weeks worth of courses as opposed to just an hour and a half of me teaching.
Right.
There's assignments, there's questions, there's discussion sessions. And so I'm really modeling it off of a traditional university because I think that we do find a lot of value in being in a classroom space, being in conversation, testing out what we know via assignments and things like that. So I'm looking forward to doing it in this way that allows me to continue teaching what I learned, but also bringing in other scholars to let them know that there's so many people to learn from. So with Loveland Hall, I'm hoping to have a space of unlearning online that's incredibly accessible and allows me to continue doing this work in a more long-term way, along with my public lectures that I hope to continue do forever.
Yes. I love it. I love it. You're paving your own way. And I mean, I'm inspired by hearing that. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Yeah, so, I hope it gives people options. Yes. People need and deserve options to how they're existing in the world, especially in a country that was never built for us anyways. Right. And so I have the opportunity to push the envelope where a lot of people don't. And so I'm happy to kind of cross those boundaries and hopefully create some type of a gate for other people to come through.
We don't know how to address the fact that this stuff is still in the air. People tell the story like Dr. King preached the I Have a Dream speech and then ascended into heaven.
Especially in anti-racism work, I say Black women are 100% experts regardless.
I'm deeply invested in building movements where folks aren't shamed for not coming out of the womb, understanding cis heteropatriarchal violence.
Prison isn't addressing trauma, it's not addressing violence. Prison is a place of trauma and violence.
Everything in the news is just like beating us down. I want to see stories about Black women succeeding and thriving.
Black folks in a white space.
Listen, you fight each other.
You may not have shit else in common, but you're gonna be friends, right?
I love all the warm-up questions. I really I was like, hell, we're here.